Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's episode of Team Training. I like to call it Applied Neolife. And this time I had a bit of fun preparing this particular one, especially since it comes after last week's where we were talking about children. So I've swung the pendulum to the other end and we are talking about older people. I think I fall in that category of being in the older age group. So we're going to talk about sarcopenia, which simply means poverty of muscles. Penia is poverty, sarco is muscle in the original languages, and it is age-related muscle loss associated with fatigue, chronic illness, and functional decline. I think it is a serious topic, so let's unravel it and perhaps look for solutions. My name is Dr. Esa Zanambasi. I have this platform, and throughout my medical career, I must say, we've seen a lot of people with extreme muscle loss. So let's discuss it. But we have to go through a growth phase, but muscle mass is said to hit a peak at about the age of 25. Thereafter, there is a decline steadily, and that decline can be aggravated by a lot of factors that we have. By the age of 70, one has lost quite a considerable amount of muscle mass. And then the dangerous zone, well, less than 70% of the muscle left that was there at 25. So they say by about age 80, one reaches a muscle mass of about 50% of what they had at the age of 25. So how can we prevent it? Well, I think sarcopenia doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen suddenly. And also, there is no single factor. Like all conditions in life and most diseases, you can't pinpoint one factor. And I want to stress that today because, you know, the paradigm that we've been socialized in is that there's one thing causing this condition or that condition, and therefore there's one treatment. I want you to just clear your minds of that notion, please, so that we renew our minds and really renew our minds. Okay, sarcopenia can be prevented. I truly think so, and we shall unpack how. And because I'm the eternal optimist, I think it can even be reversed, quite frankly. So again, another picture to show a young, healthy thigh muscle. It literally fills up the skin. And then as the sarcopenia develops, sarcopenic thigh muscle, it is taken up by quite a lot of other spaces, literally fat. So some background information to help us to connect the dots. Oopsie. Okay. Sarcopenia is age-related loss of muscle. We've said that. And with that, there's loss of strength. It begins in the late 30s and early 40s. And by 70 or 80, there is a loss. As I've mentioned, 50% muscle mass is lost. The thing to remember is that it is an important cause of functional decline and loss of independence. So we have to always put it in our minds when our older citizens are not feeling well, to bear that in mind, that they might actually be manifesting the effects of sarcopenia. Now, muscle in a healthy person should account for up to 60% of body mass. And then the other contributor of body mass is obviously bone. But we are finding that a lot of people's body mass is being taken up by other things, such as fat, okay? So muscle per se is a metabolically active tissue. That's important. And changes to muscle can have profound effects, particularly in the older people, such as loss of mobility, loss of balance, and loss of strength that leads to frailty and disability. So we do hear a lot about older people suddenly losing balance, falling down, and that's because of the degenerative effects on their nerves that supply those muscles. So another picture, I love pictures because they really illustrate what we are talking about. So when we are younger, we have good quality muscles, they're nice and big, and the fat might not be as much as when we grow older. But as we grow older in our middle age, the fat is there, the muscles have shrunk, and then they shrink even more, and now they become even infiltrated by that fat. So just note that, because that's important, and it's a condition called sarcopenic obesity. And this describes the loss of quality muscle due to infiltration of fat or by fat. And the cause of it is basically nutritional as well as other lifestyle factors. But it is caused by a deficiency of branched chain amino acids, abbreviated BCAA, AA. And those, there are 3 of them, are involved in building muscle. They're called leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And all of them happen to be essential amino acids. Now, in nutrition, whenever you see the word essential, it means you must supply. The body cannot make. And the best way to supply it is in the diet. So it is therefore very important to supply all amino acids. Otherwise, unfortunately, if the amino acids are not available, but are sitting in the muscles because at some point in the dim past, during childhood and adulthood, young adulthood, they were there, the body will draw upon the muscles to get those amino acids, because obviously they have other functions. And yeah, so that actually expedites the sarcopenia if they're not being supplied. Now, I've actually been thinking about it very carefully, and I think that it could be one of the mechanisms of a rise in cholesterol that everybody gets very, very both excited and afraid of, the high cholesterol that is rising. As age happens, and if there are not enough of the building blocks of muscle, the body will break down muscle, and with muscle is quite a release of the fat that comes with the muscle. And that will push the cholesterol up and cause those of us who are medically trained and are that way inclined to want to treat that. The condition is made worse as well by an increasingly sedentary lifestyle with aging. So what are we driving at a lot? But let's unpack it. Also associated with sarcopenia is insulin resistance, which will then manifest as some form of diabetes and weight gain and all those situations that we've talked of previously. It will manifest as, associated is fatigue, and associated, interestingly, especially in women, is arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. Looking at is that with a bit of knowledge, we can really end the trend of chronic disease. So a little bit of information again. This is purely information sharing. Let us look at the types of skeletal muscle fibers. There are 2 main types. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is what they call the slow twitch muscle fiber, and they are smaller. They are low and slow force. They fatigue much slower than the fast twitch. And then they are for long-term contractions and therefore support fatigue resistance for things like aerobic activities, postural control, marathon runners, the long distance people, the ability to sit up and maintain a good posture. Those are the slow twitch. And they also have more mitochondria. You remember the powerhouses of those cells? And they have a richer blood supply. Then there are the fast twitch or type 2. Those are larger fibers. They create a bigger force. They're also quicker, and unfortunately, they also become fatigued quickly. So they're for sort of explosive actions, and then they are tired, and then they need to be rested and replenished. And therefore, those short-term contractions, let's paint a scenario. Let's say you need suddenly to sprint because there is a tiger chasing you, or a lion, or you're in the middle of town and maybe an incident happens that you need to sprint away from. Those fast twitch muscle fibers are recruited very, very quickly to do that. And so they support power activities like sprinting, jumping, strength and agility, for example, in gymnastics. But they have fewer mitochondria, they have less blood supply, and they are less efficient than the type 1. And they have the capability of actually contracting even in the absence of oxygen, but for a short time. Okay, so that's just a little lesson about muscle fibers. But the thing to understand is that all our muscles are a mixture of the fast twitch and the slow twitch fibers. You can't say, I'm just going to have fast twitch, thank you very much, or I'm just going to be slow twitch. There is a mixture. However, the ratio of the muscle fibers depends on your activity level. In other words, are you actually actively training so that those muscle fibers develop, okay, and are maintained? And they also depend on age. And it's also beginning to make sense to me, ladies and gentlemen, why physical activity is an important aspect of health and wellness. And I'll show you what I mean in a short time. But yes, that's a picture of an elderly lady being supported. Many older people tend to slow down, and they also justify it by those words there, I am old, or I am too old. Perhaps we need to watch our words, because then they tend to come true. Loss of lean muscle, particularly the fast twitch, okay? Remember I said that they are larger. Fast twitch are larger. That can lead to age-related conditions that, can lead to age-related conditions such as the metabolic dysfunctions that we've talked about, change in body composition, and again, I've said loss of balance and increased risk of fall. So this is actually creating a case for resistance training, and that is an example of resistance training. This gentleman is actually doing various exercises using his body as the machine. Or you can get weights, and this would be useful for the older people to actually use dumbbells or a bottle of water or a bag of sand or whatever, but to exercise those muscles. Very important. Factors that lead to sarcopenia include neurological decline, which is a degenerative disorder, or the decline as a result of degenerative changes. Hormonal changes. We've talked about hormonal changes on several occasions. And indeed, And then effects on the body of inflammation, particularly if that inflammation is chronic. And then lack of exercise. I'm going to stress this again and again, and I hope it is going to create a trend that will end chronic disease. So other things, chronic illness, poor nutrition, fat infiltration of the muscles, and declining mitochondria, which mitochondria, by the way, need not decline irreversibly. Once they start declining and you start doing something about it, such as watching your nutrition and your exercise regimes and habits, you can actually rebuild mitochondria. So this is just a picture to illustrate what we are talking about. Growth happens around about 25, then they start declining. And that's, again, just to emphasize this before we move on to the next point, loss of muscle happens. So there is no single segment of our society that can benefit more from regularly performed exercise and improved diet than the elderly people. But unfortunately, society has created a situation where that's not the case. Many elderly people wish to spend their later years healthy and wish to achieve great accomplishments in their life. They still have those dreams. To achieve that, rather than considering an aging population as a negative social phenomenon, we should create a society where elderly people can enjoy a healthy, prosperous life through social participation and contribution. Now, I'm being a bit sentimental here and maybe even a little philosophical, but because this is a very dear topic to all of us, I'm sure. Because we know that factors that hamper the elderly from leading a healthy life include various psychological and social problems that occur in older age, as well as a high incidence of disease. So it's really not their fault, but I feel that we can do something about it collectively. We could start there, encourage them to be a bit more mobile and do simple resistance exercises. Now that is hot off the press. I was doing that yesterday and a picture was taken of me. Resistance exercise done regularly and consistently, as well as supplying nutrients to build, repair, and maintain muscle are important. So again, it doesn't need to be anything like you need to buy a gym membership. You can just do it outside if you prefer. I like to benefit from sunshine and fresh air out of doors. Or if it happens to be indoors, I like to do my resistance exercise. So as I say, I was just showing you that I'm practicing what I preach, right? So we need to grow good quality muscles. But now, what is the role of inflammation? Yes, inflammation. I believe we need to know that that is a contributing factor to a lot of diseases. But I've singled out one cause of inflammation. We call it polypharmacy that happens in older people. It's a fact that as people grow older, they seem to be on a lot of medication, trying to medicate away symptoms. We need to change that. So there is urgent need for measures against polypharmacy. The problems of adverse drug events, drug interactions, duplication of effects, and the presence of drugs that require particularly careful administration are all big challenges, really. And I wouldn't be surprised if that is one of the problems. Now, barriers to these measures include multiple medical institutions, like having to visit one area for the eyes, one area for the ears, another area for the bladder situation, and then the heart, okay? And then lack of coordination between the professionals. Rather than seeing the total person, they're seeing systems and diseases. And you've heard me say very often that please get to know the total individual and not to divide them up into diseases. And so that lack of understanding by patients and families is what is causing this particular type of toxicity and inflammation. Right. So let's now talk about the importance of supplementation for older persons and how we can mitigate and even reverse sarcopenia. This is a picture of somebody who's just presenting with pain and joint and muscle pain. When it is constant, non-specific discomfort or pain, please remember that it could be due to vitamin D deficiency. We've mentioned this before. I just wanted to emphasize it. Other associated symptoms, and these are very common in older people: lower backache, fatigue, difficulty to sleep, headaches, and depression as a result of sarcopenia. All those can happen or can lead to sarcopenia. It's a two-way street. And also, we here in the Southern Hemisphere are going into winter, and a lot of people remain indoors. It is cold, it is dark, and they don't get enough sunshine because they're staying indoors. And as a result, vitamin D deficiency is a real problem. So the ideal combination is sufficient exercise and a healthy diet. That is ideal. And I'm putting it to you that please start encouraging people before you recommend any supplements. Just a little bit of physical activity in the sun will do wonders, okay? And that's a promise. So many of the alterations in physiological structure and function that occur with age may result from disuse and disability, as well as from diets that are deficient in energy, in protein, particularly, and other specific nutrients. So you can't say, I'll just feed this person and not encourage them to move around, and vice versa. They go together. Now, challenges of an unstable diet and undernutrition. This was a study that was done in another setting in Japan, okay? And they found on this survey, according to the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey of Japan, that energy and protein intake are low in Japanese people over the age of 75. Now, this is interesting because that's where people have been seen to live for very, very long, but that happens in the older people. So it's almost an inevitable part of aging. And even when they are over 80, there is usually insufficient intake of nutrients. So undernutrition in older people is increasing, and it is more pronounced in women. This is actually a good reason for recommending a simple nutrition program. There are multiple factors other than just not eating enough, such as social factors, living alone or eating alone, and of course, poverty, which we all see regularly. So that is just to summarize the common triggers of disease that will lead and contribute to sarcopenia. They're all there, but please don't forget things like heavy metal toxins that can arise over many years, particularly if they're also taking lots and lots of medication. That can happen. And then don't forget low-grade viral infections, and of course, chronic allergic responses to food. All these topics we have discussed in the past. So I thought I would discuss opportunities to empower people, things like avoiding possible triggers of allergy and sensitivity, such as glutens. And then telling our older people that avoiding refined sugar will be one way to remove a very potent toxin from the diet. And then eliminating triggers or causes of estrogen dominance, such as the detergents that are out there. And then support of the immune and hormonal system. We're going to go through the supplements, and particularly supplementation with one of our most deficient nutrients in modern day diet, and that is omega-3. We are having way too much pro-inflammatory fats, like refined omega-3. So we need to encourage them so that when the rebalancing happens, then the sarcopenia will be slowed down as well. So these are all empowerment opportunities and opportunities to educate. Also, another empowerment and something that the community can do, either as families or within villages or even in towns, is to begin community gardens and getting more people involved in growing food and becoming physically active, so that there is less dependence on those very low nutritive foods that are actually damaging. So that just summarizes it. Eat food. Let us eat real food as much as possible and not depend so much on medications, but real food. And why I bring that up now is because I want to introduce you to the leading whole food nutrition company that has a scientific advisory board dedicated to ensuring that all the nutrition supplements are whole food based, and the ethic is everything has to be based in nature and backed by science. So let us talk nutrition. And this is what we have been talking about. Have you wondered why Neolife's wellness pyramid at its base has physical activity and weight management? I think if there are any guests on this call, you now begin to understand that this company cares for the total person and has a long-range vision. And that long-range vision is to prevent situations such as what we're talking about this evening, which is sarcopenia. But the reality of life is the typical lifestyle pyramid looks something like that, where there is very little physical activity, even in younger people, and then there's way too much of the wrong foods, or what I can call the very inflammatory foods. And I'm sure that actually sets the stage for sarcopenia and a decline in the energy levels until one becomes sick enough to be on chronic medications. And that's not what we really desire, because there's such a loss of valuable life in which one can achieve things round about this age group, but you can try and mitigate it. Neolife was the first company to actually say that we need to feed ourselves at a cellular level. And that's why they gave us a stunning product called TreeNN, which feeds us at that level, at a cellular level, and turns unhealthy cells into healthy cells, and enhances levels of energy, improves nutrient utilization efficiency, and more studies have been done on the effect that TreeNN has on muscle. I think I mentioned it in a previous team training. But now, because of the long-range view, the company also says, let us remove toxins as much as possible, because the presence of toxins leads to inflammation. So we have those, and we also have the core nutrition. And I'm now going to speed up a little bit. This is our flagship product called Pro Vitality. It has 4 things in there. The TreeNN, that is very, very important. The omega-3, that is also super important to bring down inflammation. The antioxidant, which helps with overall function and protection of the fats. And obviously, the immune system is also bolstered. So with a strong immune system, one has better functioning muscles that we are talking about this evening. And then vitamins and minerals. Our crucial for proper functioning of the body. Omega-3, I always like to emphasize it because it is a big deficiency, huge deficiency. And if there's one product that you could start with, it's that one as well. And then calcium, you've seen this curve. You saw those men standing up from childhood until they bent over. This seems to be the general calcium from the beginning. One doesn't quite achieve their growth potential. And down the line, there is trouble with the bone structure. And if bone density and health are inadequate, then obviously the muscles and the connections that connect muscle to bone, called tendons, are affected. And that also in itself can be the cause of sarcopenia. So yes, CalMag is very, very important, as is vitamin A and D, I've mentioned that, as is magnesium, which is now a standalone product available, but we have calcium and magnesium in CalMag, and we have vitamin D as well. Then I'll put other things just to show you that for digestive health, for example, or for the lipotropic factors that are required and other B vitamins for energy, as well as building proper tissue. This will ensure that collagen is well built for the muscles, is required. And then full motion is important for the joints. And of course, as people grow older, they have the option to use children's vitamins, but we need to also start the children properly so that they lay down good quality muscle to mitigate sarcopenia later in life. So in summary, sarcopenia can be prevented by making sure that there is adequate protein intake. Neolife, in the core nutrition that I showed you, gives us all the 22 amino acids in the shake. So they don't do isolates, because the danger of isolates is that you can then have deficiency of other nutrients, other amino acids. So it is safer, it is more advisable to do all the 22 amino acids, preferably in one meal, to start building those good muscles. Then adequate exercise. I think I've made a point of it this evening. And then avoiding chronic inflammation. So you have to control chronic inflammation. I've glossed over it by saying start in your home. Remove those very inflammatory chemicals that are also called detergents bought over the counter, and use the non-toxic brand that Neolife provides. And then stress reduction. There is no better way to manage stress than exercising, yeah? But also building community, growing a garden, building your dreams. I like this picture for the simple reason that I'm committed to one of my missions, which is to see healthier men, because I truly believe that with healthier men, we will have wealthier nations. So let's not be afraid to share Neolife with a gentleman or a lady of this age group, because guess what? They are also up to speed with, you know, smartphones, and they still have dreams, and I pointed that out. So to end on a philosophical note, I've said this is quite a sentimental topic. The Neolife vision, we need to take it seriously. As we look ahead to 100-year age of life, which we can, we rethink the creation of a comprehensive society and community. Here we are as a family. We aim to create an age-free society where we never say you're too old or too young to do this, yeah, where everyone can play an active role. And I believe we older ones, I count myself among the older ones, by the way, have a lot to offer. And we have a lot to do to guide the younger ones and to mentor the younger ones and to coach them, okay? So I truly believe we can live in peace, regardless of age. So when all that is put in a nutshell, let us take our mission seriously. And what is that? to make the world a healthier and happier place. So thank you very much. I'm going to get out of here and stop sharing and just welcome all the guests to this presentation. Thank you for being here. And now we normally open it up for any questions that you might have. But in the meantime, I will stop sharing and stop recording rather. Okay, thank you.